What's up, everybody? This is Theta Warrior. I got a special guest with me here today, Rachel from VS Options Trading. We're going to be going over a couple charts that we like for this upcoming week and discuss a few tickers. How you doing today, Rachel?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. This is my first time doing one of these, so I'm very excited and very excited to see what you're interested in. I know you're a seasoned vet yourself, and you got a great eye for the charts. So please go ahead and have at it.
Thank you so much. So we had such a nice push Thursday and Friday on tech, so it sets us up for some interesting opportunities into earnings. So that's why I want to go ahead and start off with Microsoft. This is one of my favorite setups, which are downtrend breaks with the confirmation of MACD cross. You can see Microsoft tested this trend line 1, 2, 3, 4 times, then it started to consolidate above it at the 50 SMA. So once it broke out of the 50 SMA, I'm starting to look at this for possible price strength confirmation above Friday's high. So there's a couple ways you could play this, which would be either a breakout of all-time high, which is at the 306 level, or you could kind of front run it on price strength above Friday's high. Either way, I like to stay close in the money if I were to play this. So if it were to break above this 304.5 level, you could take the 305 calls. So using short-term fibs, say I were to use fibs just from this pivotal low to Friday's range, you get 310. So if you were to use weeklies and you had a 310 target, if it were to break out and go to 310 by Friday, those 305 calls would still be worth $5 if it were to test it by Friday's close. So that's why I like to stay close to in the money when I'm doing targets. But I normally like to use fibs on a higher time frame. So you can see here on the weekly, Microsoft respected another trend line support here. And here you could use this pivotal low all the way up to highs to this retracement. You get this 321 level, even if you play around, or sorry, 321.80, but even if you play around with it, I've used this as a pivotal low. I still get 319 to 322. So I would watch 319 to 322 range as the next level if it were to break above 306. So this one has earnings, I believe, on 10/26. So it's definitely one I'm watching for a possible run into the number. I don't normally like to actually play earnings unless it's with common stock. Sometimes I will as a lotto, but this is one I have on watch for a possible run into the number.
I got to say, it's a really nice looking chart. I mean, Microsoft is a powerhouse. It's so close to making a new all-time high. Made it back there much quicker than the rest of tech. I mean, you got that nice little, bull flag consolidation right above that downtrend line that just launched it higher. I would not be surprised if Microsoft is making new highs this week. It's a great looking chart.
Yeah, for sure. And I like using, I don't know if you want to call this a triple top or a quadruple top, whatever you want to call it. That's why I think if it were to break above this triple top, then it could blue sky into the number. And if you want to use a stop, you can use either this consolidation zone or the 50 SMA. So let's see. The next one I have is Amazon. So this one was definitely a fun one on Friday. On Thursday, I was looking for the same thing that I just mentioned on Microsoft. We have this downtrend break. It tested the trend line 3 times here. It has the MACD that just crossed. So this one was one that I was looking for a possible breakout above the pre-market high, which was 33.14. So once it broke that level on Friday, it ripped. So that one was a nice one. It also has this double bottom here. So I believe this has earnings on 10/28. I'm not exactly sure, but if it does, this is also, I know it has earnings coming up, but this is either way, one that I'm watching for price strength confirmation above 3410.4. So I always like to use the previous day high for the price strength. For a target, I like to use gap fills, pivotal highs and lows, and averages of levels. So for a first target, if it were to break Friday's high, you can use this gap fill of 34.63, which is the close. And then I also like to use the Wix low, which is 34.52, I believe. Sorry, I moved it off of there. Yeah, 34.52. So this would be a gap fill zone. So if it were to break above here, then you could use this pivotal high and this pivotal high as possible targets into the number as well. If I bring it over to the weekly, it formed a nice wedge here. Again, it's trend line resistance. It tested it on Friday. I actually posted this chart a few days ago when this candle was about right here, just saying that this is a possible target, this trend line here. But either way, because it tested this trend line, it's going to need Friday's high for the next breakout. But that's what I have on Amazon. And full disclosure, I do have a position in Amazon right now. It's the 34.50 calls, but they're already up $10 and it's a rollout. So essentially it's free for me. So I'll be holding on to it unless it breaks probably this 50-day. You can use the 50-day as a support zone.
Man, what a killer move on Friday. That is just a monstrous candle. I mean, Amazon's one of those stocks that'll do very little for a long time and then just rip. I mean, when the Momo crowd gets behind it. So that 3,500 level seems to be a magnet for the stock. So yeah, again, wouldn't be surprised if we see that here in not too distant future.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and then the next one I have is shop. So this one, let's see. So normally this is another trend line. You know, I love trend lines, but I actually only had two points on this trend line and I had it extended. And then I went back and looked at this chart and I was like, wow, this respected this trend line really, really well. It was a nice back test off it on Friday. So I thought I would keep that there as a possible support zone, but I like how shop has this higher low here. It's holding above the trend line. If it were to break above this 1430 area, I'm watching this 50 SMA as a potential target. And then right here, this pivotal high. It also has the MACD cross and it's been holding one of my favorite indicators, which is the short-term 10 SMA moving average. And something else I know I talked to you about before was the 4-hour. It's this whole 1330 cross thing that I back tested for a few months and it's been working really well. And you can see here, it's this green and pink line. It just crossed on Friday. It's flagging, starting to flag here. And you can see there's slight inverse head and shoulders, kind of sloppy, but you can see it there. So it'll be interesting to see if this one can run above this 1430 level, especially after having that 4-hour 1330 cross. And this has earnings on 10/28. So we'll see if that one can get a run as well. So like I said, it has the same indicators that I use. It's very simple. I just like looking at trend lines and I like using MACD. I know you're pretty similar with the trend lines and you like MACD as well, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to keep it really simple. You know, support resistance, MACD, you know, paints a really nice picture of what direction the momentum is moving. You know, that Friday's candle there, bullish engulfing, looks very promising to me. You know, you got, you know, you saw bears tried to push the price down lower, but it, you know, found support at that prior downtrend breakout level. So, and then they pushed it right back up. So that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and I do want to mention, because shop has very wide spreads on the stock itself and it's less liquid. So you do have those factors against you when you're buying options on it, call options on it. So that being said, you don't want to chase an intraday rip on it. I watch these contracts and you can see how easily the MMs rip that up and the spreads are so wide. So it's easily to get crushed on it on a small pullback if you were to chase it. So with shop and something like Amazon as well, if it's having relative strength that day, I like to add it on smaller pullbacks where they end up taking a little bit of the premium out. And then once it rips again, they add that premium back very fast. So it's easier to add on a dip rather than chasing it through the breakout.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say that's the case for a lot of stocks. I always try and buy a dip, even, you know, during a breakout, getting in on a dip, I think always will set you up with better chances of success.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's harder to add the breakouts. That's what a lot of my members ask me too, just like, what happens if it breaks it in the morning? Like, what do you do? So say this were to break 1430 right off the open in the first 5 minutes. I wouldn't want to chase that on the first 5 minutes. I would use the first what I would use is, say it ripped to 1436 and then failed. I would use that new 1436 as resistance, if that makes sense. So that would be the new trigger essentially for long. But I would like to obviously buy a dip instead of buying the 1436 level that I'm just hypothetically making up. But like I said, the first 5 minutes I like to use as a new trigger level.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, so I'm also going to go over one that just recently had earnings. So Goldman Sachs just had earnings on Friday. So since it did have a strong earnings reaction, I like to look for follow through above earnings reaction highs. So this one is 407.3. So I have that as an entry. Again, this is another trend line break. It's finally above the 50 SMA again. It has a MACD cross. So if it were to break above this 4073 level, I would be watching for all-time highs again. And if you were to look at the weekly, you could add some fibs here. I think before, when I opened this chart up, I had fibs from this pivotal low. I like to use pivots. So if you use the 50 SMA, I would use that as a pivotal low. And then this was previous all-time high. So I actually had it like this previously. And I saw this 427 level. But then I like to play around with it as well. So if I brought it to this all-time high and back to this retracement, you get 428. So either way, you're in that 427, 428 level. So I would be using that as a possible target if above all-time highs, which is rounding up 421, because I like to round to the nearest whole number.
Yeah, again, a really nice pop on Friday. Again, encouraging that they tried to push price below that 372 level. It's really apparent if you're looking at the weekly. That was like a big prior spot of consolidation, and boom, it just bounced right back. So that's always a good sign. I love to see, price pull back, find support, and then continue moving higher. That gives me more confidence, and also, tells me kind of where I need to get out if price, isn't able to hold that level in the future.
Exactly. And that's why I like to use mainly, you can use like gap fill levels if this were to break. So right here, actually, I have 391 as the gap fill. And then that would align here with this trend line if it were to break back lower. So you can use this 50 SMA as a stop, or you can use this gap fill as a stop on longer term, on a longer term play. But I also wanted to mention that with earnings, since we have a lot of earnings coming up this week, I don't normally like to actually play the earnings, but you can do this where you can find price strength above that earnings reaction high.
Sure, absolutely. And you never know, there could be some sympathy plays as well. Other companies report in the same sector that could help move it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I guess the last one I'm gonna go over is S&P. Oops, that's kind of messed up because I use it extended. I'm sorry, I use extended hours on this, which I actually like because you can see these gaps here, but when I add extended hours, you can see more of a inverse head and shoulders on SPY.
Sure.
So again, I know I sound like a broken record, but this is another downtrend break here, inverse head and shoulders. We have the MACD cross, and this finally broke above the 50 SMA. So I would be looking for follow through above Friday's high, and then I would be using this 50 SMA as support. And I would also be using this trend line as support. So if we were to pull back again, this is a possible back test. You can extend it, but this could be a possible back test for higher, which also might start aligning with this 10 SMA that's curling up, since this is going to start catching up to price eventually. So as long as we hold these moving averages, I think this has a lot more room to run. And if you wanted to use a stop on this, there's a pivotal low here that you can use, or you can use moving averages. But right now I'm actually long from a few days ago, SPXL, which is a 3 times leverage version of SPX or the S&P. So just mentioning that since I am talking about it. But I also want to mention, especially with SPX and SPY, since it's had a lot more range recently, you can use these same indicators that I use, or I like to use the same indicators that I use on the daily and weekly down to the 5 minute for day trading. So for an example, you could take a trend line here from this high, and you can see how it broke out here, failed, used it as a back test here. We had the MACD cross and then it ripped. So you can day trade these levels. You can day trade a back test off of this trend line, or you can day trade these breakouts. So just want to keep that in mind, that since I'm using such simple indicators on the daily, they work pretty well intraday as well for day trading.
Do you find yourself doing a equal amount of day trading versus swing trading, or are you kind of more like myself, or I like to let the market dictate that? What kind of direction do you more lean towards?
So I like day trading mainly with options. I'm definitely been doing that more since we've been more volatile. When we get volatile and break uptrends, I like to take a lot of my common stock off and go mostly cash and just hold runners. And then once we break back into an uptrend is when I'll start adding more longer term positions. And when I do swing trading, I like to use common stock. So like, for example, like I bought Shop at 400 something and Roku at 100 something. So
Nice.
I recently bought Crowd. Yeah, but those are names that I've obviously scaled them a bunch of times and now I'm just holding runners. But those were names that I bought on downtrend breaks and uptrends. I wouldn't necessarily be going long names when we're still in that volatile phase, but it looks like we're starting to finally break back into an uptrend. So I'll definitely be looking at longer term plays. But right now I do more day trading since it's mainly weekly options or the next week out, which is higher risk. So I put less capital in it and just trade my plan, let it play out.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to approach it. I mean, Thursday and Friday's candle are super encouraging. SPY's back above the 50, which everyone has been looking at and watching. It'd be great if we continue up higher. All I really want to see is direction. This chop has been volatile and has kind of forced me to be more of a day trader. I mean, I think like 95% of my trades have ended up being day trades or maybe 1 to 2 day holds. So the swings will be great if they can come back into play, but you just have to trade the market that you're given. But it's very clear you got an inverse head and shoulders breakout pushing above the downtrend line, above the 50. I mean, you got 3 bullish indicators, MACD's flipping over bullish. So, you never know. We could be at all-time highs in a month from now. Plus, you've got the Santa Claus rally to think about. So it's definitely looking like a really nice setup going into the end of the year.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to you because those are the 5 charts that I thought I would go over.
Perfect.
The earnings, yeah. So
Thank you very much for discussing all of those. I love hearing other traders' insight and interested to know what you've been looking at.
No, of course. And oh yeah, let me stop.
All right, so you can see mine. Okay, we're looking at Apple here.
Yeah, I can see it. Great.
Okay, so Apple, Wall Street's favorite stock, has had a killer move this year, been extremely technical, broke out of a big triangle that we were all watching a few months ago and has kind of been, somewhat trading sideways ever since then, consolidating again, coming back up to a big level. We had it push above the downtrend, but this is going to be the spot that bulls need to overcome. It certainly looks like it wants to. I love these make or break setups because I can keep my stop really tight. If I'm wrong, I know I'm wrong quickly, and that helps, preserve capital. It's either going to break through or it's going to hit resistance and pull back. It's going to do one or the other. I tend to think that it's going to push higher just because the market has as well. You have the MACD cross, momentum is moving in the right direction. You've got somewhat of a sloppy inverse head and shoulders here. But a strong day in the market will easily push Apple over 145, which I think is kind of everyone's trigger that they've been watching. And again, to add to that bullish thesis, when you pull out to the weekly, it becomes even more apparent, especially, you've got this bounce right at the prior demand level. Prior supply level. A couple times price tried to push through, it wasn't able to. Finally, we got a nice rip over, and then now we've just retested that same breakout level. And at the same time, kind of breaking out of a bull flag here or a falling wedge. So I think all of that, leads me to believe that we will likely continue higher. So I think this is a really nice bullish setup. You could take it long over this past week's prior high. But Apple's a great stock to trade. It's very liquid. You know, the premium's not super expensive because it's not, you know, very highly volatile, but it still moves enough that, you know, we can make money on it. So that's what we want. So this is definitely one that I'm watching closely this week. What do you think of this setup?
Oh, I love it. Has the exact same indicators that I love to look at, that downtrend break with the MACD cross. So I like that it formed that higher low on the daily. It looks ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. So I think this is a good one. And you know, it also is somewhat of a proxy for the market itself. So if the SPY is going up, you know, most likely Apple's going to be going up too. The next one I want to talk about is AMD. And let me start with the weekly here, because I think that really paints a great picture. I mean, look at that. That's just a beautiful weekly breakout of the descending triangle right at that prior resistance level. You got a nice bounce and then a huge thrust up higher. So, you know, and again, same type of thing that we saw here previously. You had a descending triangle breakout. I think this is a beautiful chart. I think that AMD is going to continue to head higher. This is another cool little thing. I don't know if someone else came up with this before I did, but I always refer to this as a MACD touch and go. And basically you've got the MACD coming up to the signal line and actually finding support. So instead of crossing under, you know, the bulls came in and defended price, and you've got this kind of, you know, think of like an airplane, you know, coming down to an aircraft carrier, you know, that didn't land, it just touches and then just goes right back up. You know, they send it right back up into the sky. So that's kind of what I think is going on here. On the daily, it's really clear that this is going to be the key level to overcome. You know, we found support here and then ever since have hit resistance. So this, you know, 112, 113 level is going to be the spot to watch for me. Sweepers have been very bullish in this name, which of course I follow them very closely. We saw some big buyers in the 113 calls. They were loading the 110s, you know, going slightly in the money for that higher delta. But again, you've got the downtrend break. MACD is pointing the right direction. Yeah, I think if it gets over this level, you know, I mean, all-time highs could be on the horizon.
Yeah, I agree. And their earnings are in 2 weeks as well. And I mean, the contracts are pretty cheap for it still. So you could add those this upcoming week, like a week out, and they'll hold premium pretty well if it can break above Friday's high.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I love to play the earnings run-ups. I'm not a big fan of holding any directional bets through the numbers, just because I feel like they're a toss-up. But, you know, certainly there is money to be made if this wants to run up, you know, ahead of earnings, and, you know, in the sense that traders are trying to price it in. So the next 2 weeks, this is definitely a nice one to watch. Let me flip to the weekly, and then we'll go to the next one I want to talk about, which is Chewy. One of my favorite stocks to trade, has been on a bit of a downtrend recently. But as you can see, again, very technical stock. Lost support here. They flushed it, tried to regain that same trend line, failed it, and then they flushed it again. So week prior, we closed below this resistance level, you know, signifying that this is again breaking down even lower, which is kind of crazy considering how many red weeks it's had. I mean, this was $100 stock, you know, almost $100 stock not too long ago, got all the way up to almost 120. So this potentially could be a false breakdown. That's my thinking. I think that price is due for a bounce, basically. You know, sometimes a false breakdown or a breakout can be a great, you know, reversal type of play. So this thing is just so oversold on so many levels. I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong. It hits resistance here and then it continues rolling over. I mean, of course, that's always a possibility. But I think that this is a good potential one to watch for, you know, just some sort of retracement, you know, back up into this 76, 77 level. When you flip over to the daily, this is the earnings gap down, where it just got crushed ever since, just could not catch a bid to save its life. So this is the prior swing low. I think if we can get over that, we'll see some sort of move. I'm already in this, full disclosure, I'm long. So I do hope that it does continue higher. But if for any reason I'm wrong, you know, I'm going to know quickly. I think if it loses support here at the Friday's low, I think that would be the signal to get out. But again, this I think is a good one to watch. Got that MACD just crossing right now. So, it's just been cut in half almost, so I think a bounce is in the works.
Yeah, I like that one actually because it's right. It held the 10 SMA on Friday, and like you said, it has that MACD cross. I actually like this. This would be a good one for stock because I mean, look at it. It used to be at 100 just not too long ago.
Yeah, exactly. If you have the means in your portfolio to buy the stock instead of the options, that's a great way to do it. Like you said, a move back up to the all-time high would put you up at a double. And,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about theta. You don't have to worry about Vega, none of those nasty things that can really hurt you when you're long options. So yeah, definitely another way to play this one. And then the other one I wanted to talk about was Google, which has just been a monster this year. I mean, look at this thing.
Oh
It's
my gosh.
been so insanely strong. A great stock. Again, somewhat of a proxy to the market. Looks like it's got that same inverse head and shoulders downtrend break that we're seeing in a lot of stocks, right? Because they trade so similar. But this was kind of the prior breakout level, the prior high. Price didn't quite reach all the way down there, which will happen. We see these things in the textbooks and they're always perfect. In real life, it's not like that. This is somewhat of a decently formed inverse head and shoulders, but sometimes they're a little sloppy. They're a little sideways slanted. Doesn't negate the fact that there's still going to be an inverse head and shoulders. So this one I think is definitely one to watch. This thing can really move when it wants to move. I think above this level here would signify a nice spot to get long, which was kind of, let me just throw a line on it, which was kind of like this prior, resistance level here that we had that big push through. So I think if we can get over, call it 2850, I think that would be a really interesting one to play. When you look at the weekly, it's kind of been in this, rising channel, really nice looking rising channel, and tried to break through and then was denied, which you would tend to expect at the top of this channel, which is going to, most likely be resistance. And then you've got a big push up higher. You could call this a bull flag. You've got a huge green reversal bar right there. So either way you look at it, it's definitely pushing above this downtrend. So my target would kind of be up here, towards the top of the channel, depending on how long it takes to get there, because obviously this is getting higher and higher as time goes on and on. So point being, I think that if this does want to continue moving up, that it's definitely got more room to go. We could be 3,000, I think would be a good, psychological number to target, but definitely something worth watching, I think.
For sure. I really like Google.
Yeah, it's a really strong stock when it does want to move. Very similar to Amazon. The thing can just fly.
Yeah,
And then we'll
100
wrap it up with the Qs. Since you covered the SPY, I'll go over the Qs. And the SPY and the Qs are the two main indices that I always watch. If I want to get long quickly the tech market, I'll get long the Qs, or maybe one of the triple what is it? Not triple inverse, but the triple leverage, ETFs. So looking at this, is it a falling wedge? It could be. Is it an inverse head and shoulders? Also another scenario. Price is definitely moving in the right direction. Whenever you get a gap up, I'm always a little bit cautious, just because I've been burned so many times with price pulling back, but didn't happen on Thursday. Price gapped up and just ran. On Friday, it did exactly what I was thinking it might, what I've been, what I've seen happen in the past, where it will gap up and fill down. But the fact that it, found support right at that prior high from Thursday, I think is very encouraging. And then it closed above the open. So two very bullish candles to me, clearly pushing above the downtrend line. This spot again is where I'm kind of watching to see if price is going to get above. Are we going to consolidate a little bit first? Are we going to break right through and then, give us a nice retest to buy in here before we continue up higher? I mean, these are all possible scenarios. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. All we can do is look at the chart, analyze, the possible pivot areas, and then just play the move that the market wants to give us. Looking at the weekly, doesn't guarantee that this is again going to repeat, but I just was looking at the weekly versus the MACD, and I found that whenever we get that cross below in the weekly, there or prior, there were 13 weeks of, gestation where, price kind of just was choppy and traded around sideways. Each time we kind of sold off, came back, sold off, came back. So maybe we revisit up here, we get another one of these. Who knows? It doesn't say that it has to be exactly like this, but it's hard to deny the similarities, especially the rally that preceded these type of sell-offs. Consolidations are good. They allow new buyers to come in, they get all of the weak hands out that want to take their profits, and then that's what allows the market to continue higher. So these type of things are good. You can look at dips, in a bull market as a great buying opportunity. So something that I'm aware of, but again, we can clearly see that, we could put a downtrend line on that, like I have on the daily. Price is pushing above the downtrend line. So again, I think that this is a nice bullish setup, especially if we can get above this 370 level. Definitely looking very good.
It looks great. I love how you keep it. Like, I love the falling wedges. Like, I feel like we're pretty similar with that, with falling wedges, bull flags, downtrends. I love it.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. We do seem to look at the charts very similarly. And, I always believe that you have to play to your strengths. And there's a few patterns that I really like and that I seem to be successful with more than others. And falling wedges are one of them. Bull flags, head and shoulders, both standard and inverse. Cup and handles, I like a lot of those patterns. Those are probably my favorite, but falling wedge might take the cake. It's just so, it can be so powerful of a reversal signal, these falling wedges. So definitely a great pattern to trade. All right, well, that's about all I have to go over. I want to say thank you very, very much for taking the time out of your day to come on the channel and discuss some tickers with me. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, I think we covered it. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. This was a lot of fun, and let's definitely do this again sometime.
Yeah, of course.
All right, good luck in your upcoming week, everyone. Take care.